With so many countries technically participating in World War II in some way, shape or form, it's a shame that they just don't get any exposure. In this potential 5 or even 6-parter series, we plan to go through pretty much every country that so much as dipped their toes in the waters of World War II and provide you with the simplified highlights of what they were known for and what they did. To reiterate, if it wasn't clear enough, these are simplified pockets of information. We know that there will be country-specific political, social, and cultural context missing, but this series isn't going for depth, and rather we're looking to give a general view on how the rest of the world participated in the war through fun snippets of information that we hope you enjoy. Anyways guys, without further ado, let's get into part 1 of this mega series. Thoroughly enjoyed their neutrality and made a killing by exporting resources to both sides of the war. Argentina, however, finally joined the bandwagon and declared war against the Axis 30 days before it all ended, then proceeded to harbour thousands of fugitive SS officers after the fact, because why not? Was one of only 2 countries to declare war on the Axis in 1943. Bolivian mines supplied tin to the Allies, and they sent no other supplies or troops. The other country that declared war on the Axis in 1943, Colombia, was a bit more involved in the war and sent petroleum products to the Allies. They saw one notable engagement in 1944 where a Colombian destroyer attacked a German submarine and sent him packing. Perhaps the South American country most actively involved with the Allies, Brazil helped to influence the other Latin and South American countries to cut ties with the Axis and even sent an expeditionary force of over 25,000 men to aid the Allies in the Italian campaign. Having an authoritarian government and a large German community, the country was sympathetic toward the Axis and only declared war on Germany 2 months before it was all over. A South American neutral, Uruguay leaned toward the side of the Allies for most of the war and cut off ties with the Axis in 1942. They only dropped their neutrality and declared war against the Axis, however, in February of 1945. Surprise, surprise, it's another neutral South American country with close ties to the Axis. They eventually softened these ties and helped the Allies economically, but only declared war on the Axis 27 days before the war's end. Proceeded to axe any ties with the Axis after Pearl Harbor and produced massive amounts of oil for the Allies. Breaking off relations with the Axis early in 1942, Peru was rewarded with one of its port cities becoming an American airbase and 2,000 of its citizens of Japanese descent being shipped off to internment camps in the US. Officially declared war on the Axis in 1945. Allowed the United States to use one of their islands as a naval base this one time. Oh, and did I mention they also declared war on the Axis in 1945? Home to an artificial 82-kilometer canal that connects the Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic. Panama was vital for moving new warships to the Pacific to fight the Japanese Navy. Already a country that leaned toward the Allies and against Nazism, when Pearl Harbor hit, it pretty much sealed the deal and Costa Rica joined the war effort. Although Costa Rica only had a small fighting force of 500 men that couldn't really contribute to the war effort, they did their part by interning all Germans, Italians and Spaniards until the war's end. Yet another ally of the US and her friends who joined the war when the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred, Nicaragua only got a response from Romania, who reciprocated Nicaragua's declaration of war to declare war themselves on the 19th of December 1941. Unlike the other Latin American countries, El Salvador's government had fascist leanings. With that said, due to strong economic ties with the US, when Pearl Harbor hit, they went with the flow and declared war on both Japan and Germany. It's worth noting that over 40,000 Jews were saved by them by being provided false papers of Salvadoran nationality. Developing extremely strong economic ties with the Americans in World War II, Mexico was a silent ally that supplied many raw materials, laborers, and soldiers for the Americans. The Mexican government allowed Mexican nationals living in the US to join the war, which bolstered US forces by over 250,000 men, and eventually even formed their own famous expeditionary flying squadron known as the Aztec Eagles. Declaring war at the same time as the US, the Cuban Navy was an important bulwark of the Caribbean Sea and came to be greatly respected by the Allies in the region. The Navy escorted hundreds of ships through hostile territory, conducted constant patrols of the region, and saved over 200 seemingly doomed American victims of U-boat attacks from the perils of the ocean. By no means a major contributor to the Allied war effort, the Dominicans at least tried and offered up 112 Dominican soldiers for integration into the US Army. One of the biggest Caribbean contributors of the war, the Puerto Ricans boasted 65,000 soldiers ready for active service in the United States military. These soldiers were pretty much placed anywhere the US wanted them and therefore served all over the world in a variety of different roles. The big daddy of the war, the United States of America, was shocked at the brazen attack at Pearl Harbor and sent over 16 million American men to serve both in the Pacific and European theaters. America's true might in World War II, however, came from its powerhouse of an economy and subsequent industrial might that saw the equivalent of $700 billion worth of supplies sent to Allied nations, the majority of it going to Britain. The crazy Canadians, as I like to call them, likewise declared war on Germany a week after the United Kingdom did, marking the country's first independent act of war. 1.1 million Canadians served in the different branches of the armed forces and fought their way through Europe all the way to Germany, with some insane stories along the way, which I think I'll cover in a future video. Being invaded by the British in 1940, Iceland, although formally protesting this, put up no resistance as their whole population only numbered 120,000, whilst the British invasion force was 25,000. The Brits would then proceed to build air bases there that turned out to be extremely important in the Allied fight against U-boats in the Battle of the Atlantic. Once again, invaded by the Brits in 1940 as a response to the German invasion of Denmark and Norway. Stating their intention to remain neutral at the start of the war ultimately fell on deaf ears, and the Danes were invaded and overwhelmed by the German Blitzkrieg within a few hours of fighting. Denmark, however, was the only country to save most of its Jewish population, with only 51 out of a possible 8,000 perishing in the Holocaust. A strategically vital country for both sides, Norway was blitzed by Germany in 1940 as well. Although understandably not happy, the Norwegian government still managed to escape, and they helped to relocate the largest merchant fleet in the world to London, where the 1,000 ships would prove vital to the economic survival of the Allies, especially in the early days. One of the more famous neutrals of the war, Germany found no reason to antagonize the Swedes with an invasion, as it would only invite economic trouble, as the Swedes had promised to blow up important iron mines if invaded. Sweden, however, was not immune to diplomatic and political pressure, and was more or less forced to economically cooperate with the Germans for the majority of the war. The poor Finnish just didn't want the Russians in their country, and when they were ignored in 1940 by their allies when the Soviets were knocking at their door, they naturally turned to Germany for help. This led to a 3-year period where Finland was a co-belligerent with Germany against the Soviets. When the tide finally turned, however, Moscow demanded the Finns expel and disarm any German soldiers and diplomats remaining, and so the opportunistic alliance between the Germans and the Finnish ended in the summer of 1944. Like Finland, Estonia was in the Soviet sphere of influence. Unlike Finland, however, when the Soviets wanted to use their country in early World War II to build military installations, there was no protest, as the government was convinced that it was impossible to win a war against them. After war broke out between the Germans and the Soviets, however, Estonia was quickly taken over and around 70,000 Estonians were conscripted or joined to fight against the Soviets. Receiving even heavier demands and more brutal treatment from the Soviets, Latvia was yet another Baltic country forced to bow to Russian commands early in the war. Over 35,000 Latvian citizens were culled in order to Sovietize the country, and when Germany arrived, 110,000 men were dragged to German-controlled units, while 70,000 were whisked away and drafted into the Red Army units. Yet another Baltic country stuck in between a rock and a hard place, Lithuania shares almost the exact same fate as the previous two mentioned, with the most notable exception being that the Germans never managed to form a dedicated Lithuanian legion, although there were many Lithuanian Nazi collaborators who hoped working with the Germans would restore independence as compared to working with the Soviets, who nonetheless managed to draft a Lithuanian division into the Red Army. Already a republic of the Soviet Union before the war started, Belarus was lulled into a false sense of security when the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was agreed upon, and was among the first territories to be taken over by the Germans, only to be reclaimed in the Soviet counteroffensive during Operation Bagration in August 1944. So those were our first 30 countries, and if you didn't see your country here today, Don't worry, because as I said before, this is likely going to be a mega series with 5 or 6 parts. So make sure you click that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss any of the future videos. Also, if you are enjoying the channel guys, make sure you check out our Patreon in the description below. I want to give a big thank you to all of my current patrons at the moment. Your guys' help and support means more than you can imagine, guys. Seriously, thank you so much, and I sincerely hope you guys are enjoying the fun and educational nature of the videos we make here. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.